Shoveling.
Good evening, everybody. Today is December 6th, 2021, and this is a Moscow City Regular Council meeting. And with that, Art?
Yeah, would you all rise and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance, please?
I pledge
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Art. Oh, I guess I better get closer so that people can hear me. Thank you, Idaho State Deputy Clerk of the
world. Yes.
Just thought I'd share that. Thank you, Lori. Okay, with that, we'll move on to the consent agenda.
I'd move approval of the consent agenda as presented.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion by Art and a second by Maureen to approve the consent agenda as it is stated. I'll start to roll with Ann.
Aye.
Brandy.
Aye.
Art.
Aye.
Sandra.
Aye.
Gina.
Aye.
And Maureen.
Aye.
Okay, with that, we'll move on to item number 2. Gary, do you have any staff recognition reports this evening?
Good night, sir.
Okay, item number 3, mayor's appointments, and I do have a bunch this evening, folks. I've got 3 new appointments for consideration in the council. We'll have Cole Mize, Board of Adjustment, expiration of 12/31 of 2026. Claire Frederiksen, Farmers Market Commission, expiration 12/31 of 2023, and that is a member at large. Morgan Chaffee, Human Rights Commission, expiration of 12/31 of 2022.
Move approval of the nominees for the positions.
Second. Sorry. It's okay. It's just gonna cry.
Give the second. I have a motion by Art and a second by Sandra to approve the 3 slate of candidates for appointments, and I will start to roll with Maureen.
Aye.
Gina.
Aye.
Sandra.
Aye.
Art.
Aye.
Brandy.
Aye.
And Ann.
Aye.
Okay, and we got several of them here. I know we've got both Claire as well as Morgan, so please stand up so we can see who you are. If either one of you'd like to speak, you're certainly welcome to come to the podium. You don't have to, but if you want to, you're certainly welcome to. Okay,
Great.
come on up.
Yeah.
Come on up, Morgan. Love to hear from you.
Hi, y'all. I'm Morgan Chaffee. I am a recent graduate from the U of I in 2020. I work for a public defender here in Moscow. The Human Rights Commission just was something that I, was interested in because I care a lot about people and helping people, no matter what their background is and who they are, what is going on in their life. I worked with Family Promise at the Palouse for the last year and a half, volunteering with them and working with them at a program employee capacity. And I also have worked with tribal entities here in Moscow. So I'm just really interested in helping people that are a little less privileged than I was growing up. And that's pretty much it. I like helping people. So thank you guys for the time. I appreciate it.
Thank you.
My name is Claire Frederiksen. I'm a postdoctoral research fellow at the University of Idaho. I have a PhD in soil and water sciences and a master's degree in food anthropology. I'm excited to be a part of the Farmers Market Board. My research specializes in social sustainability and recognizing diverse values across the food system. And so I hope to bring that to the board to make sure that we have all values represented and continue to create the farmers market a center of pride for the community.
Thank you, Claire.
We'll see you tomorrow afternoon.
That's the next meeting, I'm guessing, Art. One thing I want to say, and as ladies and gentlemen, you've just seen 2 appointments that we've made this evening and the credentials that both these outstanding young women have. I, as the mayor, as well as this council up here, so appreciate the work that commissioners do on various commissions throughout this town. And that's kind of the lifeblood of keeping us going and making us move forward. And with that, I thank both of you because it's certainly very important for all of us. So thank you for your time and consideration in doing these 2 commissions. With that, we have 24 reappointments that I'm going to speak about tonight. And I'll go right through the list. And here are the reappointments. Elizabeth Stevens, Human Rights Commission, expiration at 12/31 at 2024. Victoria Seaver, Sustainable Environment Commission, expiration at 12/31/2024. Laura Beth Landis, Historic Preservation Commission, expiration at 12/31 of 2024. Mary Dupree, Transportation Commission, expiration at 12/31/2026. Steve Taylor, Historic Preservation Commission, expiration at 12/31 of 2024. Rula Wad Rafferty, Human Rights Commission, expiration at 12/31 of 2024. Jean Lovingwell, Moscow Tree Commission, expiration at 12/31/2024. Rich Gaylor, Parks and Rec Commission, expiration at 12/31 of 2024. Jason Bluto, Sustainable Environment Commission, expiration at 12/31/2024. Ted Kisha, Parks and Rec Commission, expiration at 12/31/2024. Robert Heckendorn, Moscow Pathways Commission, expiration at 12/31/2024. Samantha Martin Farmers Market Commission, expiration 12/31/2024. Ellis Efert, Moscow Tree Commission, expiration 12/31/2024. Bob Sanders, Transportation Commission, expiration at 12/31/2026. Steve Bush, Board of Adjustment, expiration at 12/31/2026. Jackson Landis, Parks and Rec Commission, expiration 12/31/2022, and this was a non-voting high school representative. Jamie Hill, Farmers Market Commission, expiration 12/31/2024. Jack Porter, Historic Preservation Commission, expiration 12/31/2024. Aaron Bacon, Moscow's Pathway Commission, expiration 12/31/2024. Drew Davis, Planning and Zoning Commission, expiration 12/31/2026. Sarah Zaski, Parks and Rec Commission, expiration 12/31/2024. Carrie Morsek, Farmers Market Commission, expiration at 12/31/2024. Daniel Cronin, Moscow Tree Commission, expiration 12/31/2024. And Aaron Gideus, Human Rights Commission, expiration at 12/31/2024. Whew.
That's it?
Well, there's more to come on the 20th in 2 weeks from now, but with those,
I move to approve that slate of commission members.
Second.
okay, we have a motion by Sandra and a second by Gina to improve these 24 reappointments of these wonderful candidates. And I'll start to roll with Ann,
Aye.
Brandy,
Aye.
Art,
Aye.
Sandra,
Aye.
Gina,
Aye.
and Maureen.
Aye.
And I do know we have several of those, some of the folks, please take a minute and stand up, or you could come up front and talk at the podium for us and tell us who you are, and so that we can congratulate you and thank you.
All right. Hi, everybody. I am Laura Beth Landis and very excited to be continuing on the Historic Preservation Commission. I joined in 2020 during COVID. So even though we didn't have a ton going on, it still was wonderful to get to know the board members and to really know my community in depth. The 1912 Center was recently honored at our Orchid Awards, and seeing how much that building has influenced our community and has brought people from all different corners of Moscow, and just been a wonderful place for us to get together and have different events. I know my school in the past has done several dances. There have been art fairs, lots of meetings, lots of wedding receptions. You know, you name it, it's happened there. And that's one small example of something that the Historic Preservation Commission has really done to really preserve our community and allow it to grow in a very positive way. So very honored to be on that. Thank you.
Come on up, Victoria.
So Victoria Seaver on Sustainable Environment. I've been on it for a while, but I wanted to echo some of what the mayor is always saying when he talks about commissions. You get I don't know how many people out there realize how commissions are kind of put together. So, you have your commissioners, and as you can tell, you have a lot of people with a lot of expertise. I'm kind of a generalist. I don't have a big old scientific degree behind my name, but you have people with a lot of heart, a lot of interest, a lot of background, a lot of knowledge. You also have a council member. So you have some insight into the council and a voice back to the council. They give reports at the end of all the meetings, and they can keep you apprised of, oh, we know we're working on that, or, oh, we should work on that. And you also have staff members. Great. Staff members are always just wonderful. And then they have their fingers on how the operation works, who they work with, what kind of budgets they've got, where does it all fit in? And so that's really important. And we get a lot, especially sustainable environment, we get a lot of guest people who show up. They want to see what we're doing, or they come and bring up a concern. And a lot of the things we work on are something that the public came in with and said, can you check on? Or I'd like to see something happen on X or Y or Z. And so you get to sit around the table with everybody and work with the town. And so that's a really cool, good thing about the commissions, and why you have so much commitment from people who are on them. So I'll throw it out there.
Thank you, Victoria. Are there others that I named out there that'd like to come up? Well, I got to tell you something. Thank you, Laura Beth, for coming up and speaking. And Victoria, we need volunteers on commissions of all stripes, because this is a very diverse town. And that's what making you said it best. I mean, I couldn't even add to that, Victoria. Thank you for all the things that you do. And by the way, this lady is usually at every single council meeting. My gosh, and of course, planning and zoning, because she's on that commission as well, correct? As well as public works and finance and admins, week in and week out. And so that's wonderful. And thank you for your work. Anybody that's on these commissions, it is a huge thing for all of us. And so thank you. That we'll move on to the next thing, which is the oath of office of Cody Riddle as a deputy city director. And we have Lori Hopkins that will administer that.
Thank you, Your Honor. As you recall, when Bill Belknap was appointed city supervisor, he will be administered his oath on January 3rd. Cody Riddle was interviewed in a panel of folks, and he was appointed by the city council. His appointment was confirmed on November 1st. So pending his first day on the job, which is today. So he's here to be administered the oath of office. If the city clerk would come forward and do that, that would be great. Thank you.
I thought for a minute you was going to say we were going to have Bill Belknap sworn in at the same time.
Raise your right hand and repeat after me. I do solemnly swear
I do solemnly swear
that I will support the Constitution of the United States,
that I will support the Constitution of the United States,
the Constitution and laws of the state of Idaho,
the Constitution and laws of the state of Idaho,
and will faithfully discharge
all
the duties of Deputy City Supervisor
of
Moscow, Idaho,
Moscow, Idaho,
according to the best of my ability.
according to the best of my ability. Thank you very much.
Well, welcome, Cody, and I'll let you say a few words.
It's good to see you all again. I had the opportunity to talk with most of you last time. I just want to thank you briefly for the opportunity. As I've shared with those of you I've met, this is certainly a huge opportunity for professional growth, but I think even more so, it fulfills a personal dream. My wife and I spent a lot of time here, and I truly believe we are coming home. Her a little bit later than me, which I'm adjusting to. But no, in all seriousness, because of that, I'm so motivated and eager to go to work for you and the community, and to grow old with my little family here. So thank you very much.
Very well. Thank you, Cody. And we look forward to you joining the team and this family that we have here in the whole city of Moscow. Welcome. Okay, now we're going to move to item number 5, which is public comment and mayor's response period for 15 minutes. I usually give, and I know that we got some special guests with us this evening for some awards with that. And I'm going to introduce Al Pawlowski, Al, if you want to come on up to the podium, sir, and I will let you tell us what's going on here, sir.
All right, thanks, Bill. Do the three of you want to come up here? Please. Okay. Good evening. I'm Al Poplowski. I'm chair of the local Sierra Club group, the Palouse group of the Sierra Club. First of all, I want to thank the city for this opportunity to present these awards to these three fine youth in a public setting. I think it means a lot more that way. The Sierra Club has a campaign to encourage and help cities, counties, and even states commit to 100% clean energy as a way to combat climate change. And that's referred to as Ready for 100 or RF100. I think everybody probably is somewhat familiar with that by now. Tonight, we'd like to honor the three youth who have made a major contribution to this campaign in Moscow. They've helped to gather several hundred RF100 petition signatures from students and other residents. They've collected signatures for an RF100 letter of support from local businesses. They've written numerous letters to the editor and the local newspaper. They've done tabling at the Moscow Farmers Market on the issue a number of times, and I was at one of those, and I was totally floored. They must have had a dozen students running around the farmers market, and it was just amazing. They created a 5-minute video compilation of locals showing their support and saying why they support 100% clean energy. And I think that's on YouTube yet. Is that any idea how to get to it? I was looking for it today. Anyways, we'll let you know if we come up with some idea how to get to that, but it's on YouTube somewhere. They not only did they meet with the city's Sustainable Environment Commission, but at least two of them served on the Sustainable Environment Commission. They helped distribute RF100 yard signs in the city and the county. And probably the biggest thing is they organized and they led 150 other high school and university students in 2 walkouts, climate walkouts for climate awareness, both in 2019 and again in 2021. When I asked one of them what spurred them to get involved, I think it was Nicole, her response was, well, instead of sitting around and feeling sorry for ourselves because of climate impacts on our lives, we decided to get up and do something. So I want to thank Elon Carter, Nicole Zhao, and Devin Conway. We're very thankful that you decided to stand up and do something about it. And I ask you to accept these awards to show our appreciation. And these are basically some certificates and a little present. Nicole's. I'm not going to shake hands with you. And Devin. And one of them, I believe, is going to say a few words.
Oh, yes, absolutely.
Okay.
Hello, Nicole. Bring the mic down just a little bit, Nicole, please. There you go.
Sure. Okay. Hi, everyone. My name is Nicole Zhao, and Devin and I are co-presidents of Climate Justice League, which is a high school climate advocacy group that we co-founded back in spring. And Alon has already graduated, but he was definitely really involved with RF100 and doing local climate action work here before he graduated. And I just want to say that Climate Justice League is really appreciative of this honor. And we think that it's definitely a great acknowledgement of the work that we've done, but also I think it shows commitment from our local leaders that they're really invested in climate action and that they want to continue to keep this issue at the forefront of citizens' minds. And I'm just really excited and thankful. And I also hope that this is kind of going to continue the momentum to keep up the fantastic local climate action work that we've been doing so far. So thank you again.
Thank you, Nicole.
Mhm.
Devin?
I'd just like to give a couple acknowledgments. So, of course, the City Council and you, Mr. Mayor, thank you guys for your continued interest in climate action. That is clearly something that the community values. And thank you for that. Also, I'd like to acknowledge Climate Justice League. We have a couple of people here. Nothing that we have done would have been possible without them. And yes, I would also like to thank the Sierra Club and Al and Michael and everyone else that started the RF100 campaign and got it going in Moscow. Yeah, and the community for showing support for it, RF100, and rallying behind our efforts. Yeah.
Alon, please.
Yeah, I don't have too much to add other than echoing, thank you guys for listening to us. It'd be useless for us to speak out if nobody's listening. It's also cool to see more people here that'll continue, more young people that'll continue working on this. And also just, it's cool to be part of it. I see Mac here, there's a lot of, environmentally oriented organizations in Moscow, and it's cool to be a part of a community that cares so heavily about the current world and the future world. So, yeah, thank you.
Well, congratulations to you three young adults, because, several things you always want to remember, and you'll do this all the way through your life because it started early in your life. Number one, you never give up. You continue to move forward, and you can make a difference. So with that, congratulations, all three of you. And thank you, Al, for bringing that forward to us.
Thank you for the opportunity.
Absolutely. Okay, we have time for others. Are there others that would like to come up and speak? As long as this is not on this evening's agenda or something that is in front of Planning and Zoning or Board of Adjustment, please come up and state your name and tell us what you may have on your mind. Okay, well, with that, we will move on to item number 6, which is a commission report for the Historic Preservation Commission. We've got Mike Ray here, as well as Nels Reese. And we'll let you go. Thank you, all you young folks.
Evening, Your Honor, council members. I'm here to introduce a man who really doesn't need any introduction. He's the chair of the Historic Preservation Commission. Really been off and on. Originally started as the chair, and Wendy served in that role for a number of years, and he was vice chair. And now he's back in the saddle to give you the report this year of what we've been up to. So with that.
Thank you, Bank.
I'm going to give you a little report from our Orchid Award.
Oh, cool. Nice.
Welcome, Nels.
Thank you.
Well, Mayor Lambert, here we are at the end of 8 beautiful years, huh?
Yes, indeed,
Nils,
sir.
could I get you to pull that microphone down, please?
Yes.
Thank you.
Will that work better?
Perfect.
Okay. Is this going to go forward if that's going to do it, huh? And go back. Okay, good. Well, it's lovely to be here. Mayor Lambert and council, nice to spend a nice little winter evening together. Some of you have been on the Historic Preservation Commission. Sandra has. Some of you have served as a liaison with us, so you know what we're up to. I don't know if everybody realizes that with our 2 historic districts, we've what you can't read in the comp plan is that we've nearly doubled the size of the Fort Russell district in the last year. So I'm sure you're aware of that, but it needed enhancing, and I think it was a good. So that's, in a sense, in the last decade, that's the biggest thing we've done. Really, is to really make Fort Russell just a little bit more believable. And of course, as I should remind you that you have to be 50 years old to be a historic building.
Nels, you and I are historic.
We're historic.
We're historic. No,
And
no,
I'm edging toward, I'm way more historic than you are. Yeah, I'm just thinking that I've now spent about 47 of my 84 years in Moscow. And so Yeah, I'm not entirely a Moscow guy. People are starting to think that I actually belong here.
Well, I spread the word all the time, you know.
Right. So anyway, as you see here, the two pictures on, oh, by the way, I just wanted to start out by congratulations, Cody. Cody reminded me that he was a student of mine some years ago. So you like to see your students do good. And
You came back to Moscow too, huh?
he came back to Moscow. There you see our two favorite public buildings here in Moscow City, this city hall, this beautiful building, this beautiful room, and of course the 1912 building there. So it's a nice way to start out this report. We have 9 seats, and we have old people on our commission, me being about as old as you can get. And we've got Jack Porter, who was with the commission when it was started back in around 1990. So Jack has been our constant guide. And we have middle-aged people on our commission, and we've got a couple young people, and you met one of them tonight, Laura Beth. And so it's really a delight to have both old and new. You know, you think about little old ladies in tennis shoes was a big idea. And it's really lovely to have young people that are really excited about the historic nature of our town. And so I would mention to you that we have 1 vacancy. So if you have know somebody who's excited about historic things, I'm sure our new mayor might be willing to look at that as a possibility. So that's our commission at this time. I've got to tell you that COVID had a little bit of an impact on us. Maybe it didn't bother you so much, it kind of bothered us. And so we met, we Zoomed, and we didn't give Orchid Awards last year in 2020. So we were disappointed about that, but we made up for it this year. And I think what I'm going to, you get the little brochure, and over time, you realize that there are 3 agencies near us that deal with historic things. The Latah Historic Society is one thing. And then Moscow Historic Preservation Commission and the Latah County Historic Preservation Commission. And people can easily get those mixed up. I can do it myself. And for many years, we used to just give our orchids at the end of a meeting at the ice cream social with the Historic Society. But Jack Porter, who's we count on him for this continuity, you know, and he thought, well, no, we ought to make our Orchid Awards something a little bit more meaningful and perhaps be able to educate people a little bit better, because typically we would give the awards at the end of the day after everybody had had too much ice cream and all that. And so we've changed that now. And this year we had as we have for several years, had our Orchid Award celebration in the 1912 building, which is appropriate. And it was really good this year. I think we just about, Mayor Lambert was supposed to be there, but he's so busy. He has at least 2 meetings every day. So of course he couldn't come to our meeting. And he sent a very honorable Art Betke in his place. I think Art has a future here in this room. So we had a lovely time in this is probably, you know, there are several things that we do as a commission. We try to note important buildings that are historic, and we try to tell the story about them. But the thing that we really love is to give awards to people. This is a national event that happens all over America, giving Orchid Awards to people who are supporting historic preservation. We've been giving these awards here in Moscow for 30 years. We've given, I'm going to say, I may be wrong, but about 146 Orchid Awards since 1991. So, and typically we give 4.7 every year. So we might give 3, we might give 5, we might, this year we gave 9 awards. And so we're kind of excited about that. And you can see what's on there. And we used the new room in the 1912 building, the new LeCompte room. You can see it up there. It has a great screen, and we just had so much fun. And I think about 50 people came, and we struggled with masking or not masking, but we tried. We had enough space so we could pretty much felt like we were in good shape. And so some people, as you can see, got their awards. We award a special certificate to each person in these awards. This was a particularly unusual year for us because many of you know that Wendy McClure was one of the, she was a serious participant in Moscow. Mm-hmm. And she, we began teaching together in 1987 on the same day. And she was always busier, smarter, and harder working than me. So of course she was more famous, but I'm the sort of bullshit guy. I can do that part. And we were disappointed to have Wendy move out of town. Mm-hmm. And so we asked her to come back and give her an award as a recipient for a distinguished preservationist. She's just done so much wonderful work here in this town. Not every professor does, mind you. You've seen a lot of professors who just come here and teach and wish they were somewhere else, maybe. Not Wendy. And so we were delighted to have her come back. She gave a presentation at our meeting about research that she's done here in the Pacific Northwest. And she was very instrumental, along with many of us, to get the 1912 building going. So the picture that you see there in the, is this pointer? Wow, this is an amazing pointer.
You got it so we can see.
It's really shocking. Anyway, she helped write the nomination to put the 1912 building on the National Register. And students were making fun of her a little bit on this. This was out of a poster that our students did for us one time. But we will miss Wendy, and we loved the ability or a chance to thank her as she's heading out of town. Well, several unusual things have happened in town. I'll just quickly go over these. Many of you remember that the house there up on the left, they were going to raise that house up and build a basement under it. And an accident happened, and lo and behold, the house came tumbling down. And the folks, the Penny family, were really anxious to rebuild a house that would fit into the Fort Russell district. And I believe they did that. And so you see the original house and you see the new house. And it's not exactly the same, but it certainly has a character that fits in. And we were delighted to know that. They could have built a modern house there. It wouldn't have been illegal. It would have been immoral, but not illegal. I'm so in love with Fort Russell. I'm sorry. My house isn't in it, but I can look at it. I can look across the street and see it. As all of you know, wine has come to Moscow. Who would ever have thought wine would come? And wine brought a beauty and wonder. And along the way, a new little 4-bedroom hotel. And so once again, in our historic downtown, we have people who are taking care to really make downtown a more wonderful place. And I think we should, so we were trying to thank them for that. We had some lovely contractors, young contractors working on the 1912 building. And so we wanted to give each one of them, because these were 3 different contractors that worked doing floors, doing finish work and one thing or another. And Jenny was delighted with the work that they did. And so we gave them each one an award. And it was, it's just a delight for those of us who have been working on the 1912 since 1990, seeing it inch by inch become the real thing that we thought it could possibly be. And it's not quite done yet, but it gives us something to look forward to. Well, then there's the water department. That silly building over there. And lo and behold, you bought it. I don't know who made the decision to buy that building. I've always thought there was this weird building, but here it is. And all of a sudden it was going to start falling down. Who would have thought that it was the owner hadn't taken good care of it? I'm not going to point any fingers. I don't know who that, I kind of do know who it is,
Doing
but
good,
I'm not going to
Nils.
mention
Keep on
it.
going. Keep on going, Nils.
Anyway, one of the intriguing things about this particular award is that typically we give to these old things, but mid-century modern stuff is now 50 years old. This building was built as I was bailing out of here in 1962 as an angry young man getting done with my architectural education. This building was being built on that very year in 1962 and 63. And so to see it come back to life, it's forced me to think in different ways about historic buildings. And this is a building that you would call a mid-century modern building. And I've spent my whole life making fun of the modernists, but it was special to see this building come back to life and really be quite a charming representative of that mid-century modern. We don't have too many mid-century modern things here in Moscow. So I was pleased with this. And this gets us out of the normal historic district concept, you know. And so it kind of shows that we can have a little bit of fun here in the Preservation Commission. The Boughton Cantrell couple, Dr. Boughton and Matt Cantrell, have one of the beautiful homes in the Fort Russell district. But if you remember, a few years ago, we decided that it was legal to have accessory dwellings of a certain size in our lots in Moscow. And we would like to encourage it because it gives a way of adding to the density of our city without changing the character of the city. And so Mac and Janice managed to take an old shed and a garage in their back and turn it into an accessory dwelling that was just beautiful. And we're quite proud of being able to make that as a showplace for what an accessory dwelling could be. No one in the neighborhood is thinking, oh my God, this is bad. I hate to see these accessory dwellings in our backyard. And then the next one, the Leidenfrost residence, this is also not in Fort Russell. This is over on 3rd Street. 3rd Street's a cool street. And this is a family that took this house and added to it and just made it beautiful and without destroying the character of the historic 1910 house. And we really didn't have we didn't have great pictures of the old one. And I was dumbfounded to have somebody point this house out to me. And I was just, it's really lovely to remind ourselves that historic preservation doesn't have to be in the historic district. Okay, so you get that you can have a home all over town. One of the other jobs, so that's our awards that we gave, and they were so much fun. And we just, I think that's it turns out to be one of the, it's a commission that's not so serious. We can have fun in the Preservation Commission. I'm sitting on for 25 years on P&Z, and it's sort of a little bit over serious, and you can't laugh as much there. So anyway, I think that it's important that we have different kinds of commissions. What we're trying to do here with interpretive signage is to make sure that there's educational signage for each one of our particularly public historic buildings, the library, City Hall, and the 1912 building. So you can see what they are. I'm sure you've seen them, and we're just getting ready to install the one in front of the library. So we're quite proud of those because the little signs downtown that anoint buildings as 1890, 1913, or whatever it is, doesn't tell much about it. And so our next project is to get one of these signs for Friendship Square. And that's what we're working on right now. So hopefully there will be a sign in Friendship Square, if we can find the right place for it, that'll give a little better background for Friendship Square. And this is a library one. It's all finished and it's ready to be installed. So these are all pretty, our three really important public buildings that we like to honor. It's going to go right there where you see the little red circle. And then there will be a new sign in down. It gets pretty cluttered downtown, so we're trying to make sure that we don't clutter up more. But we're thinking if George will say okay, that we can put it on the hotel, on the wall of the hotel is what we're striving for, what we'd like to go for. The one part of our city that has never been deified as a historic district is the campus. And over the years, we've given at least 10 different Orchid Awards to the campus and people, the good maintenance work that they've done. But if we were in the middle of talking to the university about 2.5 years ago, and then along came a new president, and along came financial problems, and along came COVID. And so we haven't gone we haven't delved into this project as much as we'd like to. But we're hoping that Scott will get things organized and we'll be able to start talking to him a little bit better very soon. I guess that pretty much.
Well, Nilja gave a splendid report on the Historic Preservation Commission as well as the Orchid Awards, and you did bring a smile and some laughter from all of us, whether it be a counselor or myself. And so it is kind of nice to have an enlightening presentation, and that was terrific.
It's important not to get too serious about ourselves.
I don't disagree with that. So does the council have anything for Nels? You'd like to?
I have one question.
Okay, Sandra.
Nels, I know a while ago there was not quite talk, but some ideas tickling in people's brains about also trying to get a district on the past 6th Street, south of 6th, and that part. Is there still talk going on around there?
Yeah.
Well, yeah, but I didn't want to call it that.
About it, but I'm going to say that the university district would be more critical, but inch by inch, see the housing south of 3rd is there's a lot of the rich people didn't build over there, so it's kind of a different kind of a mix. And there's wonderful homes over there, but they're not as cohesive as Fort Russell. And so we will probably develop some kind of a local district where we could begin to include housing groups here and there. But it's not clear to me that Swedetown will ever become a national district. We would probably do it locally a little bit better. We're already talking to people in the Swedetown area. Yeah. So we are working on that. And another project that we didn't put out for years we've been putting out this little tabloid. And we didn't do it this year. And I mean, it's my desire to try and get a really nice brochure about historic Moscow that could be in the chamber and out in the motels and all those places. Because there isn't really a beautiful brochure, that sits in one of those little bins. So I thought that's what I've let that slide a little bit, so I didn't want to talk about it too much because it isn't quite ready to go to press yet. But my thought is that we could get something that would be just a little bit more exciting, that would be more like a keeper, a kind of a thing that people would want to take home and keep. Because I never kept these tabloids. It's kind of mixed in with the ads. You know what I mean? And I don't know what you do with the ads, but I know what I do with them.
Thank you, Nils.
Okay.
Thank you so
Bye-bye.
much. Goodbye. And Laura Beth, you're the vice chair. And young lady, I can tell you something. You will learn a lot. You stick around this guy a few years, and you'll have stories to say 50 years from now. Thank you very much, Nils. Okay, well, with that, we're going to move on to item number 7, which is a sewer general facilities charge called the GFCers implementation. We got Tyler Palmer with us. Hello, Tyler.
Your Honor, how are you doing?
Good, thank you. How are you tonight?
I'm doing great. If you give me just a moment, I'm going to pull up a presentation here. I had thought about taking Nils' advice and trying to inject some humor, but general facilities charges aren't really that funny. So I'm glad he did the humor injection for this evening. Well, this one wasn't quite pulled up, so it's going to take me just a second.
Once you get historic preservation in there, you just can't get it out.
All right, there she is. Thank you all for your patience, and we'll come back on. All right. Yeah, we're here today to talk about the implementation of our sewer general facilities charges. Just a brief description of what a general facilities charge is. I think everyone is fairly familiar, but with a general facilities charge, it's a charge that we impose in order to assure that new users of the system, so people who are tying on to our utility systems, cover the cost of capacity of the impact of that development. And so it's a way to assure that new development is paying for new development and that the existing users aren't bearing the burden of the capacity impacts of new development. And so that's in a very basic way, that's what a general facilities charge is. It's you are going to add the need for X amount of capacity in the system, and therefore this is the cost for that capacity addition to the system. So as we looked through the general facilities charges, we recently completed, you may recall, a utility rate study for both water and sewer in last year, in 2020. And through that process, we took a look at both our rates and also our general facilities charges. There was some recent case law that came as the result of a suit between the North Idaho Building Contractors Association and the city of Hayden. And that resulted in the courts determining what they thought was a fair and equitable way to calculate general facilities charges. And so through that process, through the process of our rate study, we took a look at our existing general facilities charges. And what we found was that when we applied the formula that was generated through that case law, we were actually charging less than what was allowable by the case law. And so we didn't feel like there was a need to make an immediate change. If we'd been charging more, we would have made an immediate change, but we were actually charging less. And so we were able to go through with the fee schedule process, apply that, and come up with a reasonable and equitable way to apply our sewer general facilities charges. In addition, it was a pretty big discussion point with our Citizen Rate Committee during that sewer and water rate study. And one of the things that was brought up was that the way that the general facility charges were previously structured, it could be a little bit of an impediment for affordable housing, in that we had some minimal thresholds for plumbing fixture units for our general facilities charges in the different categories. And so that resulted in, say, a studio apartment or a one-bedroom apartment generally would have the same general facilities charge as a 2 or 3 bedroom apartment because of those minimum thresholds that we had for those items. And so as we looked at that implementation, what was determined is that, similar to what you've heard ad nauseum about our storm utility, the right way to approach this was to establish an equivalent residential unit. And so we went through and looked at our average flows and were able to establish an equivalent residential unit. And then we were able to apply that to a plumbing fixture unit. And so we could determine how many plumbing fixture units represented an equivalent residential unit. And so as is important with all these types of policies, it has to be implementable. It has to be something that can't be such a crazy out there concept with all these weird calculations that we can't implement it, we can't explain it, and it takes the community development staff 3 years to figure out what we should be charging for a new development. And so this was one of those situations where it was actually, simplicity was really elegant in the situation. We were able to determine what that rate was, determine how many plumbing fixtures that represents, and then just apply a fixed charge per plumbing fixture unit. And so the impact of that, I'm going to show you here on these few slides. And I do have to say, this new laser pointer, for me, I'm colorblind. And so with some of the smaller ones, I think I'm pointing at something. So this is awesome for me. I'm loving this. So this is the impact as we run through. So if you look, the FY21 shows the current structure with the minimum thresholds. So the minimum threshold for a single family was 20 PFUs, plumbing fixture units. And so the resultant general facility charge was $2,410 if they had 20 plumbing fixture units. If they had 27 plumbing fixture units, which was determined to be the number of plumbing fixture units per equivalent residential unit, it would have been $2,613. So what we're proposing with one, pardon me, I gotta go back. With one plumbing fixture, with one equivalent residential unit equaling 27 plumbing fixture units, you can see that the impact on a average size single family residence is within $3. And so that came out very equivalent, which was really good to see as we applied this calculation, to see that it really was on par with what we were seeing within that development, and it matched up with that equivalent development that we're seeing. Pardon me. Here's where you start to see some of the impacts that we thought were beneficial as we went through this process when thinking about affordable housing, and we feel like it makes it a more equitable approach. So here's an example. 15 plumbing fixture units was the baseline for the apartment for a general facility charge. And so previously, if you had an apartment with 15 plumbing fixture units, your rate would have been $1,775. With the new proposal, if you have 15 plumbing fixture units, it will be $1,453. So you see that reduction because there isn't that minimal threshold that you have to reach. Just showing you how this applies to just another class. So just to be clear, the nice thing is there is no distinction between classes here. So the plumbing fixture cost is the plumbing fixture cost period across the board. So there's not a commercial plumbing fixture unit cost versus a residential, because capacity is capacity. The capacity required for a toilet is the capacity required for a toilet. For a shower is the capacity required for a shower, and what you're buying is capacity in the system. And so this is the impact of the commercial. You can see that with the 15 plumbing fixture units, if you had a small commercial with, say, a couple restrooms, you'd be looking at $2,410 under the previous system. It's again, 15 would be $1,453. So it's if you have a small office, you don't have as big an impact. But if you build an enormous hotel with a lot of plumbing fixture units, then that's reflected in the plumbing fixture unit cost as that escalates. And so we felt like this was a good way for us to establish an equitable plumbing fixture or an equitable general facilities charge that reflects the actual impact of these new installations on the capacity of that system. So this was taken to the Public Works Finance Committee and reviewed on November 22nd with a recommendation for approval. With that, I would be happy to stand for any questions you might have about this.
Questions for Tyler?
Question.
Okay, Brandy?
Are the plumbing PFUs actually counted or?
Yes. So and they currently are, and they have been. And so when there's an equation that is used, so it's not just like there's a plumbing fixture unit. There's in the code, there are definitions for what appliance has what plumbing fixture. So like a dishwasher has a certain number applied to it. A washing machine has a certain number applied to it. A shower, a toilet. And so as those come in, that's part of what's calculated in community development. They take a look and they're looking at that already. And so it's a real simple calculation where they say, okay, this building has X number of plumbing fixture units, and now it'll be applied, that amount will be applied to them.
Okay. And then is there a maximum? You were showing the examples of 20 and 27, so no. Okay.
No, there's no, I mean, this would just apply if someone came and built a 300 room hotel, we'd count the plumbing fixture units. We'd apply the $96.89 per plumbing fixture unit, and that would be the general facility charge because they're buying that capacity in the system.
And then one last question. Do you project that with the some going down, some going up? Is the end result going to?
Yeah, stability, that's a really good question, Brandy, because as you all know, stability is really important as we look at any of these rates. And as we look historically at our sewer capital accumulations, yes, we will still have the stability needed in order to make those capital expansions.
Other questions for Tyler? Okay.
Well, I'd move approval of the amended sewer general facilities charges.
Second.
Second, was it Brandy or Ann?
Ann.
Yeah. Okay, we have a motion by Art and a second by Brandy to approve the
Ann.
amended, or I'm sorry. A motion by Art and a second by Ann to approve the amended sewer general facilities charges. I'll start the roll with Maureen.
Aye.
Gina?
Aye.
Sandra?
Aye.
Art?
Aye.
Brandy?
Aye.
And Ann.
Aye.
Okay, very good. Thank
Thank
you,
you.
Tyler. With that, we will move on to item number 8, which is a public hearing, proposed fee amendments. We have Gary Reedner to do the presentation this evening.
Thank you, Your Honor.
You're welcome.
As we choreographed tonight's council meeting, the general facilities charges were intentionally placed before the fee resolution amendment because those general facilities charges are included in that amendment. As noted in the CCSR, in August, typically City Council sets the city's fees for services for the upcoming year to be implemented October 1st through September 30th of the ensuing year. That was done this year. Council passed the fee resolution in support of the budget. And going back and reviewing, we found out that the general facilities charges were actually not calculated as we had intended. And we found a couple of other things while we were in there. The 1.5 inch meter charge was off, too high as it turns out. We also had Magenta parking permits, which nobody knows about because they exist to serve the Moscow School District at West Park School, where the shared parking lot for Gormley Park, the old swimming pool site, and also shared by West Park School. Years ago, through an agreement that was done with Moscow School District, they actually purchased what we call Magenta Permits that's only available for that parking lot and for that institution. Every year, like clockwork, we get a check from the school district to purchase the requisite number of permits, and their teachers and folks can park there with those permits. For some reason, about 5 years ago, Magenta Permits fell off of the fee resolution. We have no idea why, but the school district pays us every year for rental of that parking lot, or at least spaces within the lot. So, in fact, the Magenta parking permits are the reason that we're having a public hearing tonight. Idaho code requires that if you are implementing new fees, which since this was not in a immediately previous fee, that it would be considered a new fee.
or if a fee is increased by 5% or more, then a public hearing needs to be held on the fee resolution. So that brings us to the last change, and the last change is one that's fairly minimal. It has to do with sanitation fees. And just through some mistakes over the years, there was a $2 tipping fee that was included for mechanical containers. The tipping fee, there are tipping fees that are charged at the transfer station or the solid waste processing facility for municipal solid waste, inert demolition, or non-MSW, asbestos, so on and so forth. But none of those tipping fees are $2. They are much higher than $2. So the $2 was mistakenly put in there. That has now been taken out. We've also added some definitions to make sure that the tipping fees are accurately identified as tipping fees. So all in all, going through the general facilities charges, you saw there's nothing cataclysmic there. Brings us in line with Idaho law, which is always good. And it's always gratifying to see that even before that case came down, our GFCs were right in line with what the ultimate result of the calculations of the court recommended. So that's always a bonus. So with that, I'd certainly stand for any questions before you open the public hearing.
Questions for Gary before I open the public hearing for me? Gina.
I'm going to sound dumb. What's a tipping fee? What does that mean?
If you go out with say 1,000 pounds of municipal solid waste, just household garbage, you go across a scale, and tipping fee is just the vernacular for taking it onto what they call the tipping floor, dumping it out, you pay by weight. So the tipping fee is whatever the ton weight is multiplied by the percent of a ton that you're taking to them.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Okay, thank you, Gary. I will open the public hearing at 8 o'clock exactly. Would there be anybody that wish to come up and have anything to say? We'll give you 3 minutes. Give us your name and your address, and we will listen to you. Know that. I see nobody rushing up here. I'm going to go ahead and close the public hearing. I'll say it's 8:01 now. Okay, well, Gina.
Your Honor, I'd like to make a motion that we approve the amended fiscal year 2022 fee resolution.
Second?
Okay. Gina made a motion. Sandra made a second to approve the amended 2022 fee resolution. I will start to roll with Ann.
Aye.
Brandy.
Aye.
Art. Aye. Sandra.
Aye.
Gina.
Aye.
And Maureen.
Aye.
Thank you, Gary. We will move on to item number 9, which is replacement of ordinance 2021-16 with ordinance 2021-16A. We've got Mike Ray here to present this evening. Hello, Mike.
Evening again, Your Honor, Council. So this is pertaining to the Woodbury annexation ordinance that the council approved September 20th of this year. As the council knows that every annexation ordinance needs an exhibit map as well as a legal description that the applicant generates, their surveyor. There was an issue when the Idaho State Tax Commission received the annexation ordinance with the legal description that the surveyor prepared. And so this is correcting that deficiency with a revised ordinance 2021-16A.
Okay. Questions for Mike?
It's nice to have a survey that closes.
Well, it's pretty essential for it to close or it will not happen. So
It's kind of a gap at the end, doesn't work. So I move we approve the replacement of ordinance 2021-16 with ordinance 2021-16A.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion by Art and a second by Gina to approve the replacement of ordinance 2021-16 with ordinance 2021-16A.
Your Honor, if I may, due to a oversight, that should be under suspension of the rules requiring 3 complete and separate readings, and then it'd be read by title and published by summary.
I apologize.
Wow,
for
when
that
did we
omission.
decide that? It's not on my paper here. Did it just come up at this moment or?
No, it just came to my attention.
So,
I would
Okay,
modify my motion to incorporate those terms.
I'll still second it.
okay, so they're gonna approve the replacement of this ordinance with a suspension of the rules requiring 3 complete and separate readings. Is that correct?
Since this
Read
ordinance
by
re-
title and published by summary.
Yes, since this ordinance replaces an ordinance, then it is under the same conditions as the earlier ordinance was passed.
Okay, everybody got that? We're okay with that? The seconder is okay with that, Gina?
Yes, sir.
Okay, I will, everybody understand? I will start to roll with Maureen,
Aye.
Gina,
Aye.
Sandra,
Aye.
Art,
Aye.
Brandy,
Aye.
and Ann.
Aye.
And now I will read that ordinance. Ordinance number 2021-16A. An ordinance of the city of Moscow, a municipal corporation of the state of Idaho, providing that land described in section 1 of this ordinance and generally shown on Exhibit A attached hereto and incorporated by the reference being annexed to the city of Moscow, providing that the provisions of this ordinance be deemed severable, providing for this ordinance to be in full force and effect from and after passage, approval, and publication according to law. With that, we will move on to item number 10, which is resolution of the use of the ARPA funds. Gary, you were here to present that as well.
Thank you. Bill, if I could get the light. Thank you. Thank you. And I want to apologize for my oversight on that last ordinance. Just goes to show after many years, you can still let stuff get out of the hen house.
Well, it keeps us all on our toes, so.
It's not like the shock of if we don't change this now, we'll be bringing it back to you next week. Okay. Council recalls that we had a workshop on October 25th. See if I can work this. October 25th of 2021, we had a workshop for 2 purposes. The first was reviewing the funding of the emergency communications project to address a major challenge area in the city's strategic plan. That is that we had inadequate emergency radio infrastructure. And at the same time, we were looking for direction, staff was looking for direction for the use of the city's American Rescue Plan Act or ARPA allocation. So we went through, laid everything out for emergency communications. And so as you will recall, and I'll just go through this because we've already essentially, as the council in the open budget process had already approved these, but because it was part of the workshop, I thought we should at least go through it in a summary fashion. So that funding, as you recall, we had CARES Act Public Safety Initiative reimbursement in the amount of $743,866 the council allocated for that project. We also had a budget allocation approved in the FY22 budget of $1,181,667. And there was an additional general fund allocation that was fund balance that had been held for self-funding, and then $300,000 of additional fund balance that we could bring to the table to address that as well. So a total of $2,525,533. The project itself could be as high as $3,400,000. And that is something that we're taking a conservative approach at. The study, when it brought forth the different estimates of equipment, that we felt that what we're seeing now, we can't really trust estimates that much, so we didn't want to get into it where we didn't have sufficient funding. So we wanted to let the council know that that is a possibility. Additionally, that the existing radios that we have, which in the estimates were going to be wholesalely replaced, could be used. Some of them could be used, the better radios, as we phase that in over time. So as I indicated, that project has already been, it's underway right now. Staff is working, information systems, Bill and I, the police and the fire. We have a group that's working on that right now. And you should be seeing something fairly soon as to a plan for implementation. Okay, so then we go to the American Rescue Plan Act, state and local fiscal recovery funds. Some of this you've seen before. I've shortened it up a little bit, but again, I think we need to go through it just to remember, okay, what exactly are we doing? So the U.S. Treasury wanted to support the country's response to COVID-19. So one of the stated objectives was to replace lost revenue for eligible state, local, territory, and tribal governments to support vital public services and to retain jobs. Also, immediate economic stabilization for households and businesses, and address systematic public health and economic challenges. So our allocation is $5,528,399. It's going to be dispersed in 2 payments or tranches. The mayor indicated last time that's a bond term. I did not know that, even though I've handled a couple of bond transactions. So thank you. So it'll be paid out in 2 different disbursements. One we received already, June 30th of 2021. The other one will be paid within 1 year. So we should receive that sometime during June, probably, of 2022. 12 months of the first. There are some fairly strict rules, and you've heard Tony Bean tell you over and over again that the structuring and the timing of match and grants and all this other stuff, if you don't get it done, the money's gone. This is very similar to that. There are strict rules that the funding has to be obligated by the 31st of December of 2024. And obligated means an order placed for property and services and entering into contract subawards and similar transactions that require payment. So it is an obligation. It's not just a wish. And then the funds must be fully expended by December 31st of 2026. That seems like a long time, but as you know from the first presentation that we did on the 25th, and then again on at Public Works Finance Committee later, that there is a lot of preparation for this. And it's interesting, we've seen discussions about the infrastructure bill that was recently passed by Congress. Everybody said, well, geez, this money is going to come down, shouldn't be a problem. When everybody says, no, it's capacity. We have to retain the engineers and get the engineers working on projects and so on and so forth. And then how many contractors do you have that are going to be able to perform all these duties, so on and so forth. So it's like a hugely complex supply chain thing. So allowed uses, there are a bunch of these responding to the public health emergency, and it just goes through the laundry list. Most of these are not municipal issues for municipalities in our state. There are some cities, larger cities, that might do some of this, but Moscow has never ran a vaccination program, been involved with the public hospital, so on and so forth. And of course, our hospital is a private nonprofit. Okay, public health and safety staff, payroll expenses for public health and safety. We did receive, under the CARES Act, some funding for that. And in our case this year, we did not have a negative impact for COVID-19. We continued to do our jobs, and we're able to do that within our budgeted funds. Hiring state and local staff. And again, you look at the date, if I can work this thing again, there we go. If you look at the date, January 27, 2020, that is a key date for ARPA, because what it is intended is to let you recover back to where you were pre-COVID. So we did not have any of these situations where we laid employees off and then have a need to bring them back. We were able to, and as you recall, we froze salaries and for a period, 1 budget year, and that allowed us to keep our staff on. And we did not see the huge decreases in revenues that had been predicted. So that's very beneficial for our community. Assistance to the unemployed. This is typically handled by the state. Again, not a municipal responsibility. Contribution to state unemployment trust funds, again, something that we don't do. Small businesses, assistance to small businesses, very similar to the CARES Act, but a little bit different. And nonprofits. So that is something that the council was very interested in, and we'll revisit that in a moment under that definition. Assistance to households, including cash assistance programs to respond to the COVID-19 public health emergency, aid to impacted industries. So again, this is something that we do not have impacted industries, as you can see here. Tourism, travel, hospitality, those were ones that we had PEP assist us in identifying programs and those sorts of things, and actually interviewed some folks. And so we didn't have, I know there are some tourism, travel, there are some, Nez Perce County, for instance, is using that section in order to aid their airport. So it did not fit definitionally, we felt, in for us to use it for the airport. But again, that's something that could be revisited if council wanted to. Expenses to improve the efficacy of public health or economic relief programs, again, typically run by public health. So not something that we typically do. Survivors benefits, again, not a municipal responsibility. Disproportionately impacted populations and community. If there is something that was disproportionately impacting low-income housing or something like that, you might be able to help that. Council at the time had talked about looking at affordable housing, as affordable housing being would be something that would come under this rubric. Providing premium pay to eligible workers. And again, this is one of those situations that we did not experience. We have folks doing essential work, but premium pay was not something that we had explored early on. Now, there are a lot of rules that go along with premium pay. You have to explain to Treasury why you're doing it, justifying it, so on and so forth. And as you can see, there are special rules if it prioritizes low and moderate income persons, so on and so forth. And then they also talk about different percentages, 150%. So you're really talking about fairly low wage workers if you're going to offer premium pay that would amount to 150% or more. Okay, providing governmental services. And of course, this is where the government so interested us. One of the things the CARES Act did is it did not allow you to make up revenues. You could not take any holes in your revenues and supplement it with CARES Act funding. So it was both surprising and intriguing to us both that ARPA would allow us to do that. So we immediately embarked on an analysis. As you can see, the last part of that sentence, calculated according to paragraphs D1 and 2 of this section. D1 and 2 of this section gives you a recipe on how you calculate that up, including timeframes. As soon as we saw this, we ran excitedly down to finance and said, run the numbers. They ran the numbers and said, no, we don't fit. So they ran them twice and checked them, and we are lucky enough and fortunate enough that we survived the COVID depression, if you will, fairly well. So we did not have that. So necessary investments in infrastructure, which is where, as you recall from the workshop, is where council wanted to utilize this. So water, sanitary, and storm and broadband. Sanitary and storm, sewer and water. Broadband, we council has not, we reviewed the broadband needs of the city. We've got vendors who provide that. It's available. So that was not something that is utilized more in more rural areas than it is in municipalities. So our needs are typically the utilities, water and sewer. In our case, as we move along, as we explained at the workshop, our water fund is the one that needs the help. So if you look under these various federal acts, if they are eligible for anything under those acts, then you may use ARPA funds for those. So we'll talk about that more in a minute as well. So we talked about proposed allocations. Again, we had a workshop, and after the council reviewed it, gave us this direction. Staff had proposed a $300,000 small business and nonprofit assistance program. Council said that's not enough. Let's throw some more capacity at that. Because as you recall, staff's presentation was that we don't really know what's out there. We haven't, we're using anecdotes. There are some surveys going on right now. And I know Bill and Elisa have put together or are in the process of putting together a program for council consideration. Not able to have it ready tonight, but the capacity is here as council considers the attached resolution. Again, we're uncertain of the need, but it would have requirements and guidelines that show the economic hardship that you can say has resulted with some amount of certainty from COVID-19 and would bring it back to the council for approval and allow us to be able to operate a program that is fair to everybody who's eligible to use it. And again, and you'll recall that information that the funds have to be obligated by the end of the year in 24, have to be expended by the end of the year of 26. So it takes time to do these things. So the obligation is really the key. And if these can be obligated, if there is a need, if they can be obligated and paid out on those timelines, great. But if it turns out there is not enough need that it takes up $750,000, then we want to leave enough time and staff will bring back to you on a very regular basis what is going on so that, and what happens if you don't expend these funds, you don't get them obligated in accordance with the law, then the funds go back. So we want to be sure that we're able to use those funds locally. And as we'll talk about here in a minute, about the water program. But the next allocation was the affordable housing program of $150,000. And what we had looked at was that that funding could be used to supplement funding that council, you'll recall, was proposed in the FY22 budget, that $50,000 would be used for an affordable housing program, and that affordable housing program was brought to you, approved by council. And that funding went to $30,000 because $20,000 was reallocated to climate response to climate change. But it's hoped that council will again bring $50,000 to the table next year. So it doesn't mean that it's a straight line thing that council puts in $50,000 in the budget and then $50,000 per year is put in through the ARPA program. It might be front loaded in order that we respect those obligations and expenditures and to respect that under the program. You'll recall that we have two eligible organizations in town, Habitat for Humanity and the Moscow Affordable Housing Trust, that they have a building cycle as well, and it takes them time to gear up. So we want to make sure we respect that. So funds not utilized, again, would be, we're going to ask that we do that, make sure the funds get obligated or that they're turned over so that we don't have to give the money back. We can use it for another need, which would be water infrastructure. Okay, you'll recall that we have a new stormwater utility. And as you will recall, we had a $600,000 sewer jet truck. We started off with a monthly fee for, not called, what is it called? The unit for ESU? Equivalent service unit. Came out to be $7.92. That originally it started out at $12.50 and then went to $9.75 or $9.33. Sorry, too many numbers in my head. But suffice it to say that because we were able to phase it, take advantage of some economies, we were able to get that to a fairly reasonable rate, as reasonable as we could, and still meet the obligations or the requirements of the permit. Unfortunately, what it did is it required us, we need to get started on the cleaning and inspection of our stormwater pipes and conveyances, and that means we need a new sewer jet truck to do that. It's about $600,000. We were able to put away about $275,000 in the FY22 budget. We still were going to move forward with the purchase by utilizing accumulated funding in the fleet internal service fund. We would have brought that to you had we had to do that. Fortunately, ARPA, because it's allowed under the Clean Water Act, we are able to use ARPA funding for that. So we have two projects. One, again, is a $600,000 sewer jet truck. And the second is the Hog Creek relocation or daylighting project, which I think I just went the wrong way, which occurs right in this area. So that is where $1 million of the ARPA allocation was directed that we could utilize it for. Lastly, water capital projects. You'll recall well number 10, the booster stations were estimated to be about $4.3 million to construct those two, when actually it turned out to be just about double that. We've financed that with two revolving loan funds. And that is a great way to allow us to do the work up front. But it also means that a large part of our rate will now be used to amortize those loans. So we are falling behind on our capital program for the water fund. Sewer fund is still in pretty good shape, although we've got some temperature issues and things like that, but we're in fairly good shape with that. But as you can see, these projects here have a combined estimate cost of about $4.8 million. So just to show you where those projects are, these are all very large projects. So we're talking about getting water essentially from where it is produced on the west side of town, across town to where our storage facilities are, which are predominantly on the east side of town. So just to look at that one more time, you're talking about, it costs about $1 million each to do these projects, and we would accumulate funding, probably wouldn't take on additional debt. We'd have to increase rates quite a bit in order to get that rate to where we could pay the payments on these. So this would be a great benefit to our water program. What it does additionally, it does have a good effect. I'm not going to say that it's going to be cataclysmic. It's a magnitude issue, but it will, rather than have to raise rates to get these accumulations, we'll be able to use ARPA funding. So we'll be able, hopefully, to moderate future rate increases because we're using the ARPA funding for these projects. Okay, in your package, you have a draft resolution with the proposed ARPA funding that Council directed us on October 25th. This was presented to Public Works Finance Committee on November 8th and brought forward to the entire council. I'd certainly stand for any questions.
Questions for Gary?
I do have a question. So we had talked about this a little bit, but I don't quite recall. With the water projects, they're not all going to be obligated and happen all at the same time because it's not possible. And there is always the question of maybe some of the infrastructure thing could go towards some of this. So there's going to be some projects that start right away, and others there's a potential that the timing, if the money is obligated and then we have a chance for infrastructure, if the timing works out, is it too late if it's obligated? Like, would we want to hold off on obligating one project at a time? Or is it only if it's expended?
You want to comment on that?
I guess I can comment on the fact that the water projects will be phased, just given the nature of the sequencing of the improvements. We do need to complete, for example, the Pullman Highway transmission and A Street transmission before we can do the downtown transmission project. It's really a function of flow to be able to flush the 24-inch main that we'll be installing in the downtown transmission project. So we need to have that ability to bring the volume of water to flush that line once it's constructed and completed. So there's going to be a sequencing of those projects. at this point in time, it's uncertain what infrastructure funding is could possibly trickle down to local jurisdictions based on the infrastructure bill. What we are potentially hearing is a lot of that money is going to hit the state revolving loan funds. And that's going to be the method of disbursement to local jurisdictions, potentially expanding that resource for water and sewer. Transportation is still uncertain how that's going to be conveyed. So I don't know that there's going to be substantial grant funding for water or sewer infrastructure beyond the state revolving loan fund, which they're loans, they're just low interest loans. So I don't know that there's going to be a windfall on that front. Certainly we can monitor it. And if we'll start off, if the council approves this allocation, we'll start off both with consultant services for the downtown project because it's fairly complex with a lot of conflicts. And we'll also start with in-house design for both Pullman Highway and the A Street with the idea that we're probably 2 years before we get to construction of really the first phase of those projects. Well, I should take that back. We are working on the Pullman Highway first phase this year for construction next year. So there will be time and they will come out in a sequence. And the council could in the future revisit this if there's some other higher priority use. If there is funding that's available for water and sewer that we're not anticipating that becomes available, we could certainly workshop that and reevaluate that with the council to see if there is another potential use we'd like to allocate that to. I mean, the resolution is a policy statement of the council. It can be modified by the council. The goal was to give at least staff direction based on what we know today. How do we think these funds would be best utilized? If more information comes forward in the future, more funding sources become available, we can reevaluate that. And if there's more need that's expressed in the community, I mean, I think our hope is to have the small business nonprofit program rolled out really early next year. We'll see what kind of demand and response we see. And that will also help kind of gauge what other uses we might see that funding going toward. And if we do see a large demand and we outstrip that 750,000, then we can keep our eye on the infrastructure bill. If we see any signs of funding come along, we can be available for the council to respond and potentially reallocate the funding if that comes to fruition.
Yeah. I mean, I think all the water projects make sense to do with this money. That's one of the things that we can do with it. Just kind of the hope that knowing that it's phased, that we can be strategic with when you make those obligations to the extent possible.
And my expectation also is costs are continuing to escalate dramatically. A lot of those construction cost estimates are from 2 years ago. They did have an escalation factor to them, but it's probably not keeping up with current cost. I would be surprised if we were able to construct all of those for the amount of money that we're estimating as we get into the design, learn more about the projects. Those are very high level planning level estimates. And we're seeing that cost change, on a daily or weekly basis. So my expectation is you can add 30% to those projects likely by the time we get them to construction in 24 months or 36 months from now.
We also need to remember that these are just 4 projects out of the entire CIP. So should there be significant infrastructure dollars, we have places for it to go. So
these were those kind of large transmission projects that provide broad community value and benefit because it addresses fire flow, addresses conveyance from production to storage and for distribution. So they kind of had that broader, larger transmission features and broader community benefit. And that's why we identified these.
Yeah. Well, and Gary, your point is very well taken. I think we would certainly find other very important projects to do if infrastructure money came along later.
Maureen.
So, Bill, I have some questions for you on that issue of the $750,000 for business and nonprofit. Are we going to set up like a priority thing, how do you see structuring the application process?
So we have an outline that we'll bring to committee next week. At least we're targeting that. We were to committee just about a month ago with a rough outline of concepts, and there was a desire to expand some of the nonprofit, especially those in the social service delivery in the community, to not only have it be an obligation to demonstrate an adverse impact in revenues or increasing expenses, but also increasing demand for services in response to the pandemic. So we have developed a modified program that would expand that opportunity So there'll still be a somewhat smaller grant award for just all small businesses, nonprofits that they could request, but that we'd have a slightly higher award for those social service delivery firms, and nonprofits, and it would not be limited only to showing an economic impact or reduction of revenues, but also an opportunity to expand and provide new services and programs that react to the impacts of the pandemic. And so that's how we're going to kind of structure it. And, we'll kind of see how that response is. And those will come for, we'll make that application process. We'll talk about it at next committee. If that program is agreeable to council, then it'll come to the council for full approval. The process will be that we'll select those applications. We will advertise it, put out the applications, call for applications, review those, make recommendations, and those will come to the council for your review for consideration of award.
Thank you.
We had hoped to have that ready tonight, but time just did not allow that.
How that goes.
Sandra.
A couple different times, and we had talked about this in council, that if we do not use certain funds, it will go to water, which I understand. What is the plan for a cutoff date for when we decide that happens, and how do we decide, no, we're not headed in the right direction for X, so now we're going to transfer to water? How is that going to happen?
We had talked originally about regular reports back to council. As we get into this, it might be as much as first council meeting of the month. It might be a report to committee, Public Works Finance Committee, so on and so forth. But as we draw closer to that December 31st, 24 deadline, when it has to be obligated, the heat's going to be turned up quite a bit. So my suspicion is that it will become even more frequent at that time. But council retains that right to say, okay, let's pull the trigger. This isn't working. Let's now allocate it to water.
Great, thank you.
And from our staff's perspective, really looking at the end of 23, the very early 24 would really be when we'd want to make that determination. Just because we do have to have those funds obligated by the end of 24, which means if it's a project, it has to be designed, placed to bid, contract negotiated and awarded, then we'll want to have adequate time to do that. So it's probably going to be that, we kind of indicated by 2023. So either end of 23 into early 24 would probably be when we need to make that decision. If we haven't, just so we can get that project designed, bid, and those funds obligated.
Right. I just don't want to get so focused on it's like, oh, we might not be able to use the $750,000 for this. So quick, let's move it over. I don't want to move things too fast, but I don't want to lose out either. So I just want to be really mindful of that.
Sure. Correct. I understand.
And also with the separate 150 that's for the affordable housing, the 750 can address in related but different ways also some like homelessness or transitional housing that's really unique from that 150. There could be some overlap, correct?
Yes, I think it's, well, and as Bill indicated, working on through your nonprofits, if you have a nonprofit that's working with transitional housing or something like that, certainly that could be used for that.
Right. So they're just sort of those different definitions or interpretations of what affordable housing is.
You bet.
And so that could be encompassed with some of those nonprofits out of that 750
Yeah, and we
as well.
intend this to be as flexible as possible, knowing that the federal government isn't very flexible. So we want to be sure we just don't miss out.
Right.
Okay. Other questions?
Right then, I'd make a motion to adopt the proposed resolution directing the use of city's allocated ARPA funds.
I'll second that.
Oh, Brandy can take it.
Okay.
Okay, Brandy got the second. Art made a motion, Brandy seconded that motion to adopt the proposed resolution directing the use of the city allocated ARPA funds. I will start the roll with Maureen.
Aye.
Gina.
Aye.
Sandra.
Aye.
Art.
Aye.
Brandy.
Aye.
And Ed.
Aye.
Okay, with that, we will move on to item number 11, resolution opting in opioid litigation. Jeez, I'll spit it out. We got Mia Batista with us this evening to do that presentation. Welcome, Mia.
Thank you.
Advance, reverse, and the pointer.
I think I was going to spit that word out for a minute. All right.
But you did it.
Opioid.
Oh, that's yelling at us.
Sounds like
I like how the P&G are connected.
Mayor, Council, thank you. So if you recall, the opioid litigation has been going on for quite some time. There was some period of time ago where we, as a city, were approached by a law firm that was interested in trying to solicit cities and counties to sign as a separate entity to join the lawsuit. At that point in time, the state hadn't opted into any lawsuit yet, but we knew that that time was probably coming. And so we opted as a city to not do that individually. If you recall, on October 25th, 2021, Mayor and City Council, you received a letter from Attorney General Lawrence Wasden, where he indicated that the state has drafted a proposed interstate allocation agreement, and they are now moving forward in hopes that all qualifying entities, cities, counties who qualify, some fire districts, school districts, health districts, that they would now opt into the settlement agreement that the state has negotiated, but it only will apply if so many of the qualifying entities sign in, opt in. And so with that, the Attorney General's office has provided us a PowerPoint presentation. I've supplemented some of the slides. I've added some based on questions after the committee meeting presentation. And so I'm going to go through that and happy to answer questions as we go. Not everybody knows what an opioid is. A lot of people know it as heroines, and there's synthetic opioids such as fentanyl, pain medications that are available by legal prescription, such as oxycodone, hydrocodone, codeine, morphine, and others. And what makes it a disorder is, you have this problematic pattern of opioid use that causes significant impairment or distress, and it's easily addicting. And so the Center for Disease Control and Prevention reported that there's nearly 841,000 people that have died since 1999 from a drug overdose, and that over 70% of the drug overdose deaths in 2019 involved an opioid. The overdose deaths involving opioids included the prescription opioids, heroin, and synthetic opioids such as fentanyl, and that has increased over 6 times since 1999. And the overdoses involving opioids killed nearly 50,000 people in 2019, and nearly 73% of those deaths involved synthetic opioids. So this is just to provide some background as to what is spurring this opioid litigation. And the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention estimated that the total economic burden of prescription opioid misuse alone in the United States is $78.5 billion a year. And that includes the cost of healthcare, lost productivity, addiction treatment, and criminal justice involvement. Attorney General's office provided this slide to show the addiction and overdose, why it should be considered an epidemic in Idaho. And this gives an example of the deaths in Idaho alone. At the committee meeting, I'd shared some more local statistics that were provided by Latah County. And I can share those with the entire group. So for Latah County, January 1, 2018 through July 18, 2018, there were 6 opioid-related overdose deaths. In 2017, there were 7. 2016, there were 2. 2015, 3. And 2014, there were 3 opioid-related overdose deaths. 2013, there was 2. And the information was not readily ascertainable from the coroner's records from 2008 to 2012. So that just gives you an example of how it has impacted us more locally. So Idaho is participating in the 2 nationwide settlements. These settlements resolve legal claims related to the opioid epidemic with Johnson & Johnson, and then 3 major pharmaceutical distributors. Through the governor and attorney general, they signed on to these settlements on August 20th of 2021. And like I said, because the state's participating, eligible local governments, including the city of Moscow, may now also participate in these settlement agreements. And there's two main ways these settlements will help the state address the epidemic. One's by providing funding for the opioid remediation, understanding that this isn't going to completely solve, but it will definitely provide assistance and help, and through broad injunctive relief. And I'll get into more of those later on in the presentation. And so the funding that's available to Idaho, if all qualifying entities opt in, then we could be looking at 120 million that is provided to the state. And then there is a distribution allocation model where we would get a certain percentage of that on an annual basis. And so if you look at this, the base would be 64 million. J&J would contribute 10 million of that. The distributors 54 million. And that would be guaranteed. And then the payment timeline, J&J provides 22 million over 9 years. The distributors provide 98 million over 18 years. And then depending on how many qualifying entities opt in, from 64 million, the money goes up. It's an incentive. The more who opt in, the more money that will be allotted through the settlement. This is just another way of describing what I just said. There's a couple different slides that give different ways to look at this. Under the incentive A, it also kind of lists who, and again, these slides were provided, most of these slides were provided by the Attorney General's office. And it lists who's eligible, all counties, cities that have 10,000 or more, or who have signed on to the litigation as a separate entity, school districts that are larger than 25,000 enrolled, fire districts that have over 25,000 population, and hospital districts that have over 125 beds. And again, the message here is the more they need the minimum number to opt in to even be eligible for the state allocation agreement that they've negotiated with the distributors. If we don't meet that minimum number, I have a slide here. So if we don't meet that minimum number, then what's under default is what would be allocated depending on who files separate lawsuits. And so the default, if it applies if there's no allocation agreement or allocation statute, they would need legislation to establish an advisory committee to recommend expenditures from a trust fund. No funds would be allocated directly to participating special districts, and the funds allocated to city or county that does not participate or whose share is reduced under the settlement agreement go to the trust fund. This is not what the state wants. This is not best case scenario, the default. So really, the state's proposing this specific allocation agreement where 40% goes to the state, 40% goes to participating counties and cities, which if we opt in, if the city of Moscow opts in, then we would be part of that 40%. 20% would go to regional health districts. So again, they need 60% of the population of eligible counties and cities to sign on for the agreement to even be effective. And we have a drop dead date, which is why we're here today, because we have to opt in by a date in January. And so that's why this is before you today. And then if we do not have the state's proposed allocation agreement, there also the Idaho legislature could pass a statute specifying how all or some of the funds are allocated. The Attorney General's office is not pursuing legislation at this time, but is focused on reaching the agreement that they've already negotiated, as long as the minimum number, the 60% opt-in. And so there are requirements for use of these funds under all of the options. 85% of the funds must be used for opioid remediation, with 70% used for future opioid remediation. The funds may not be allocated to a non-participating local government. So if we choose not to opt in and we have not filed separate suit, which we have not, then none of those funds would be allocated to the city of Moscow. And funds allocated to a local government are reduced if they delay in participating until after July 15, 2022, or do not participate until after claims are barred. The last, at the committee meeting, I was asked about, what can these funds be used for? It's in Exhibit A. There's quite a long list. I've just put a few here to summarize. Treatment. It can go to provide funding for the opioid use disorder, to support people in treatment and recovery, to connect people who need help to the help that they need. address the needs of the criminal justice system involved with working with these people who have this need, and to address the needs of pregnant or parenting women with OUD. There's also funds available to go towards prevention, to prevent the overprescribing and ensure appropriate prescribing and dispensing of the opioids, prevent misuse of the opioids, and prevent the overdose deaths. There would be a lot more checks and balances in place than there are or have been. And then other strategies is provide training and funding to first responders, leadership, planning and coordination, and just general training and research to those who are in the medical field, who maybe need additional resources to help address this. And the injunctive relief, I touched on this a little bit. There will be major changes in how the prescriptions will be distributed and sold, increased accountability and oversight, independent monitoring. There will be a national database that's funded by the defendant distributors to help stop deliveries of opioids to pharmacies where diversion and misuse are occurring. And Johnson & Johnson will be prohibited from selling or promoting opioids. And so this slide again, who is eligible to participate? I already went over that. The city of Moscow is government who's eligible to participate. How do you participate? So that's why this resolution is before you. And so if you decide you want to opt in, then that's what this resolution is drafted to do, is you giving us direction to opt in and giving me, city attorney, authorization to sign the forms opting in to these settlement agreements and to sign any other forms that come up consistent with us opting in. January 2nd is the date where we have to opt in. I've already received the email, and we have to opt in through the digital form. I've already received the forms. Attorney General's office has already called asking why we haven't signed yet. Let them know today was the day of our council meeting. And so if that is the direction you want to go and you pass this resolution tonight, then I will actually sign the paperwork opting in tomorrow. If you have any questions, I'll leave this up. The Attorney General's website has a lot of information and links to all the national settlement agreements and any other information that you may want on the opioid settlements.
Mia, do you know when we will find out about the 60% if the state has qualified for that?
Let
Is
me
there
see
any
if I can
date
go
on that when
back.
that may?
So January 17th is our deadline to inform if participation is sufficient. So we should know by January 17th.
All right. Brandy?
Why would a entity not opt in?
That's a
That's
good
a great question.
Okay, all right, that's my only question. then.
I think what maybe one reason is if they wanted to, maybe they felt that they weren't happy with the distribution, the allocation model, and felt that they had more of a need than what the state allocation agreement determines. And so
Mhm.
maybe they would then want to file a separate suit. But
Yeah, and when the ways of where it said you 85% or something had to be used for the direct opioid, you gave the different examples. So how does the city do that? Would it be through a similar thing like we were talking about with ARPA, through our nonprofits that provide those kinds of treatments and prevention, or is that a question for later?
I think that's more of a
I mean,
question for
we
later.
don't have,
but I
we don't currently.
There are different ways to do it. You can partner. There is an option, I believe, that we could give our allocation to public health,
Mhm.
and the North Central District Public Health Department could utilize it in their program. So there are different ways to do it. Again, it's treatment, prevention, all of those things. So there are a lot of options. And I don't believe we're talking about a giant amount of money on an annual basis, about 20,000 perhaps.
roughly depending on how many opt in.
Yeah.
Sandra had a question.
Yeah. Do you know, can the Attorney General change their mind at any time and decide to pursue the legislature? Or
Well, they've already negotiated the settlement agreement. And so if 60% of the people sign on, of the eligible entities, then I would not expect
Okay.
them
Yeah.
to
Good.
pursue legislation in lieu of, or to take the place of the settlement agreement.
Maureen, did you have something?
No, I have to say, I agree with Brandy in terms of it would be crazy not to. It doesn't seem to make any sense at all. But I also think that we talked about the issues of creating kind of a coordinated effort between the county, the city, the courts, the police. And I think that if everybody gets a certain amount, I think we should really explore that and create a committee that does it. Because I know that there's committees now that are going on specifically on this issue before the litigation fund comes in, and just how much more, if we had money from everybody, the impact that we could make, and that would actually save the judicial system a lot of money, because the bulk of their cases in the criminal area are dealing with drugs. But I think we could really do something productive with it.
Ann, did you have something?
I did. Yeah. I just want to make sure that the phrasing here, that I'm understanding it correctly. Because when it says 60%, it says of the population. So is it 60% of the county? So 21 of the 35, or 60% of the population is represented by whoever signs up?
60, I believe it's 60% of those qualified.
Is that word population in there?
Because some areas
It's interesting to me.
right?
Because let's say you had Ada County and that represents, a large chunk. If it's a super populous county, we're talking about population.
There is a list of all the eligible local governments in Idaho that could participate. I don't have it in a slide, but I could certainly provide that to you and then make it available if you would like to take a look at that.
Interesting.
But you mean then it's 60% of the eligible entities have to
Right.
buy in?
Yes.
Yeah.
Not 60% of the total
Yeah.
populace. or-
And the health district is its own entity, like it can opt in.
One of the three.
Yes.
Okay.
It's just interesting phrasing.
Jan?
Well, I can't be more in favor of this. And so you have to start on this end of the table. I'd like to move that we approve the proposed resolution authorizing the city attorney to enter into and sign on the city's behalf the Idaho opioid settlement Interstate Allocation Agreement and the National Opioid Settlement.
So you
Yep.
seconded it, Ann?
I cut Gina off with my second.
Okay, all right. Gina made the
I agree.
motion and seconded it. And the motion is to approve the proposed resolution authorizing the city attorney to enter into and to sign on the city's behalf the Idaho opioid settlement Interstate Allocation Agreement and the National Opioid Settlement. And I will start to roll with you, Ann.
Aye.
Brandy.
Aye.
Art.
Aye.
Sandra.
Aye.
Gina.
Aye.
And Maureen.
Aye.
Okay. Thank you very much, Mia.
Thank you.
With that, we will move on to item number 12, which is the report on airport terminal funding, and we have Gary Reader to give that presentation.
Thank you, Your Honor. I don't have a presentation as such. As you will recall, we had on November 8th, council held a workshop and we talked about potential financing of the airport terminal project. Brett Kudlicki and Tony Bean, the executive director of the airport, were over here, gave the presentation and essentially talked about what the airport board had hoped to get for local participation toward the construction of the terminal. That number was $10 million. During our presentation that night, or during their presentation, it was determined that what needed to be raised locally was approximately $6.1 million because of CARES Act funding capacity and savings that the airport board had. So $6.1 million. Council at that time, we were focusing on $2 million as one of the sponsors of the PMRA. And so council that night indicated that if the city of Pullman was willing to move forward with $2 million as well, if they supported the terminal project, and if they were willing to, there were several conditions that the participation from the city of Moscow would be phased to an extent because of the same way that we phased our participation in the Runway Realignment project. So that means the cash flow issue would have to be handled through the city of Pullman. And lastly, that because the city of Moscow's participation in the airport is exactly the same as the city of Pullman's, that the city of Pullman would consider providing us some sort of revenue sharing arrangement for governmental revenues that were generated on the airport property itself and hopefully in an area outside of the airport that's impacted positively by the airport development. The mayor sent a letter dated November 10th to Mayor Johnson, who is not only the mayor of Pullman, but also the chair of the PMRA board, and laid out the conditions to the mayor. And they were presented at their council meeting just before Thanksgiving. And then they were going to come forward with making some decision the Tuesday after the Thanksgiving break. So that would have been about 6 days ago at their regular Tuesday night council meeting. At that time, they considered the proposal. They were given the same presentation by Tony Bean and Tim Dacey, who's an architect for Mead and Hunt at the airport. And the council, Pullman City Council, indicated that they would first extended appreciation to the city of Moscow for our co-sponsor lead, if you will, and indicated that they would in fact go ahead and make a $2 million commitment as well. That gets us to within striking distance with some other gifts that are currently being worked on. As you know, the obligations, if you will, the commitments need to be in by the end of 2021 because of that timing of those FAA grants, CARES Act funding, and so on and so forth. So Pullman indicated that they would match the $2 million, that they would also do the cash flow. So we are able to phase in. There are some things that we'll talk about in a few moments that I think we can take some of the pressure off the city of Pullman in the same way that we did originally with our airport runway realignment funding. Something that was not addressed that night was and this was one agenda item throughout Pullman's agenda. So it wasn't like it was a workshop and all focus was on the airport. But Pullman City Council did not address the issue of a potential revenue sharing arrangement. So I've inquired of Mike Urban, the Pullman City Administrator, where that sits. As you also know, we also have council authorized a resolution to have the city of Pullman deed 1/2 of the airport property and fixtures to the city of Moscow. And the Pullman City Attorney is working on that and will coordinate with Mia on that issue as well. So as it sits right now, we still have an inquiry to make. We will be bringing a resolution to you at the December 20th council meeting, hopefully. And hopefully by then we will have a status of the revenue sharing discussion as well. So it gets us to the point of where are we with our ability to fund this project. So we're talking a $2 million participation, and the city of Pullman has indicated that they are able to cash flow the local match, if you will, as long as our obligation is paid by the end of 2025. And again, it's one of those things, just as we are funding our participation with interfund borrowing as we did for the runway realignment. And then council back in 2014 took foregone tax authorization, and that is the funding by which we are paying those loans back to those enterprise funds. The way that we were able to make that work before was that we were able to make a $500,000 contribution out of the general fund for the first payment for the runway realignment project. So $500,000 out of a $2.5 million obligation. And so we will be bringing a proposal to you. Oh, before I get off the subject, we have one more payment to make in 2023, and then the runway realignment project, our obligation will be paid for, and we will then begin to meet our obligation toward the $2 million for the terminal project. We will be coming back to you again, maybe as soon as Monday's Public Works Finance Committee, but certainly by December 20th. We have a similar proposal that we will be coming to you with, that we have a certain amount of unanticipated fund balance that is available, that we could make an early payment on this $2 million obligation. We'll bring that to you, like I said, hopefully next Monday. It'll be probably in the range of $250,000 spread over 3 payments to get to the 2 million. We may have some additional funding that was unlooked for that would allow us to, again, front load more of it and finance less of it, which saves us all interest and that sort of thing. So again, exactly the same model that we utilized for the Runway Realignment project. So we will bring that forward to you in maybe by next Monday, in no way later than December 20th. And as I said, the only loose end that I'm looking at now is to get some feedback from the city of Pullman on those that other issue. So certainly stand for any questions.
Questions for Gary? Pretty straightforward. And Randy?
Will you just explain the Pullman cash flow thing that you said and our obligation to Pullman?
Pullman will be making their, of course, everybody hopes that you come in with your $2 million today, they put it in a bank account, and then they pay the local, whatever the local expenses are. We're not in a position to do that. Pullman has some funding. I believe they called it their tourism revenues that they're able to use. They've also got some other revenues available. So they will be able to pay their $2 million as it is necessary. Since we are not able to do that with our full 2 million, then Pullman will provide through their interfund borrowing or whatever their mechanism is to go ahead and provide that funding ahead of our payment so that the project can be completed. And the promise from the council is a resolution, just as we did for the Runway Realignment project, that we will pay you so much money by such and such a date.
Brandon, how that
Okay.
works
Yeah.
is all these different grants from the FAA, you have to have a portion of upfront money to supplement that. And one of it's like a 1.5 million to start with. And then in June of 22, a similar amount. Then later on, like towards the end or into 23, another certain amount in order to make all those grants work, because they do a chunk of them at a time over like 3 or 4 different periods.
So it's not that they're fronting money for the Moscow's portion, that we're not having to obligate back to Pullman. They're just going to be the ones that come with the cash forward, and ours we obligate to the airport.
We will obligate it to Pullman.
Oh, we will. Okay.
Yes, we will, because they'll be fronting it up to start with.
Okay.
Yeah, it's a different thing. The Runway Realignment project, as the mayor will tell you, it started in 2014 and it is not quite completed yet. So as these FAA grants came up and we were able to pay out over a period of 4 years, came in just a great time, because for every one of those grants, some amount of match had to be provided. With the terminal, there's only certain things that the FAA will pay, and matching the FAA amount is not that huge of an issue. It is the amount of the type of improvements at the airport, the parking lots, administration offices, concessionaires, those sorts of things that the FAA will pay nothing for. So as they're building the building, they need the money now.
Can I ask a question on that, follow up on that? So is there an interest in who, I mean, I guess we have to pay Pullman, but the answer is, do we pay them a certain percent of our interest? So like if we are going to put it out in payments, we have to pay Pullman, do we pay more than 2 million because we don't
No.
have it up front?
No, and Gary, when he brings this back on the 20th, or this Monday, he's going to be explaining that portion.
Okay.
So you'll understand that, Maureen, how that works.
Yeah, Pullman is doing it exactly the same way that we did. They are utilizing their accumulations in some of their utility funds, and they are paying themselves a certain interest rate, just as we are paying. We pay 2.5% to our enterprise funds that we purchase from.
That's
But
really
our
good question.
obligation will be $2
Perfect.
million.
Okay, I have one more question. When you were talking about with the runway project with the foregone taxes, but that just helped us with 1 year, right? I mean, you take the foregone and that's.
You're exactly right.
Okay, I just wanted to make sure.
We keep going back to that saying, okay, that is what the council authorized, was that $219,000 that we refer to it as foregone because it was taken, but it was taxes that were authorized for that project. So
Got it.
that's why I
Okay.
keep
And
referring
that's,
to that.
okay, and then, so the funding is going to come from some unanticipated fund balance that we'll be learning more about later, so that will be general fund, and then the
Intra-fund borrowing.
intra-fund borrowing.
And that has to
Okay.
be done through a resolution, and we'll prepare that as well.
Okay. Well, thank you for the report, Gary.
Thank you.
That is the end of our regular agenda, but we will go into reports, and I'll start with you, Art.
Yeah, part of the recent meetings was the Urban Renewal Agency, where 5 of the 6 remaining lots in Alturas have been sold. And so the URA is funding the monies that were generated from the sale of those lots to the taxing entities. And that might be some of the unanticipated monies Gary was mentioning there, is our share of $665,000 associated with the sale of those lots, finally. And so that'll be coming in the near future. The 6th and Jackson property continues apace, slowly but surely making its way through the whole process to hopefully get to construction by this spring and put up a building there as the gateway to Legacy Crossing. Otherwise, Bill and I were down in Boise at the Association of Idaho Cities meeting, learning with gleeful anticipation what the legislative session may be bringing to us. And we'll all hear more about that as the news comes in. And also we have the legislative day for city council and the city government, January 20th down in Boise, for those on council who would like to be attending. We had a fire department banquet last Saturday night, a very elegant affair with lots of awards and recognition. Our volunteer fire department does a fantastic job in EMS and fire department stuff, keeps all of our insurance rates very low, and we have quite an enviable insurance rating as a result of the efforts of our local volunteer fire department, and they should be very much commended on that one. And a good one was we had the employee chili cook-off a couple of weeks ago with very tasty chilies. I think there were 11 of them. There was a lot of chili there for the poor judges, Gina, Bill, and myself to sail through. But Amanda Argona won again this year, so she's a repeat winner there. And I spoke with the ASUI leadership about town gown issues, and they're contemplating having a get-together between the town and the gown again a little bit later this spring and try to reestablish some communication back and forth across the Deacon Avenue area. So that's what I've got going on.
Hey, Brandy.
Parks and Rec had a pretty great presentation by a large group of Palouse Prairie charter school students about the Milton Arthur Park. They created a survey about what kind of play structures and equipment people want there. So it was a really great project that they did as far as learning how to create a survey. They included pictures and all these ideas, and just they had 100 and something responses to their survey. So that's pretty good. They compiled all the data. They had bar graphs and charts and talked about it. I feel like the conclusion was things to climb up, things that spin, and slides. But there was a discussion of a lot of other things that they initially thought would be really great, but once the surveys came back, they realized, well, that's not one of the more popular things. So and the commission did approve moving forward David Schott with the request for proposals for that, with a really good idea of what they want to see there. So that will be something to look forward to. And there was also consideration discussion about pursuing Bee City USA, which will be similar to our Tree City USA certification. There are only 100 and something Bee City USAs across the whole country, so it would be pretty cool. The commission did recommend pursuing that, and there will need to be some minor changes procedurally in order to establish a subcommittee, which is how they wanted to proceed with that. So that is not, those changes need to be made before the next step can happen. So that will be something that will, I believe, come to the council at some point so they can move ahead with that. That's what I have.
Man.
Yeah, I had a chance to have a conversation with Rich French, the new executive director for the Palouse Knowledge Corridor, who's about a month into that role. And he was having lots of conversations with stakeholders as he steps in the position. I'm sure a few of you have already had those or have been asked as well. And then I also wanted to mention that there's going to be a Value Added Ag Summit in Pullman on January 26th, and PKC is plugging that as well. For the Tree Commission, I want to give a kudos to David Schott, the staff liaison, because at the last meeting, prior to the November one, I had mentioned that we had discussed the possibility of trees for carbon sequestration at our climate workshop. And then he took it upon himself to do some research and come back to the commission. And so we had a really great discussion about which potential trees that were also native would be great at that for those purposes and how that might intersect with the Arbor Day tree giveaway. So that was a really great conversation. And I don't think I have anything to add to the historic preservation presentation that Nels gave this evening. I think that's it.
Thank you, Annie. Sandra.
I am sad to say that I had a food pantry work emergency on the SEC meeting date. So I did not make it, nor did I have enough time to call any of my pals up here to cover for me. So I missed that, and I apologize to the SEC for not being there. But looking forward to the next meeting. And while this is not really a report, I just want to remind everyone that this Saturday is the alternative giving market at the fairgrounds. Love to see you there.
Thank you. Gina.
Okay, urban renewal. I have to say that it is the earliest time that I'm usually expected to be thinking. It's always very positive and very forward looking. And you guys deserve a lot of credit for getting those 5 lots sold and returning some money again. That's a very good thing, very positive. I attended a PBAC meeting, and I will tell you that while it was an hour and a half long, the biggie was social media update and keeping the intern. She's done a really good job with the social media, both Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. And so she's doing a good job there. Again, the report's coming. Okay. I will tell you that I spent a particularly riveting hour and a half with the Clearwater Resource Conservation and Development Council this afternoon. As I have shared with you in the past, they are heading towards dissolution. They did one of those Robert's Rules of Order special rules that they don't write in the book that said anything that was on the agenda we can add to without any kind of warning. So we came in with an agenda that said, here's this item, and we'll end up at dissolution at the end of the year. Here's this item, and we'll end up with dissolution at the end of the year. And item 3 with dissolution at the end of 22 is what got chosen. And I got to listen to it on a cell phone. So I kept hearing the whole time. So the good part is that they're going to keep their doors open through September 30th of next year. The executive director will be a 15-hour-a-week executive director, no change from us. CETA is going to pick up the one remaining Youth Conservation Corps project. And after that, it will be dissolved. Transportation meets on Thursday.
Okay.
Oh, and I did, sorry, one more thing. It was really exciting. Safe Routes to School stakeholder Zoom meeting. It was on the 1st. And they were basically just showing us kind of what they've done and getting feedback from us. And I think, I can't remember, there were a couple of us in there, but we were all, kind of given our ideas about what they could do and additional things. And they're seeking another 2 years of funding. I might be wrong on that, but they're heading into their next round of funding. And that was honestly pretty exciting. I don't know what I expected, but it was pretty dang good. Okay, I'm done.
So both of mine got canceled. And I want to say that in addition to what was said about the volunteer fire department, Being there was 3 of us from council that were there. I guess Art is considered, well, okay, so it was Art, Sandra, myself, and Haley were there, as well as the mayor and Gary and Julia. But one of the things I thought was so interesting is they were on, the firefighters were on, and twice in the middle of that dinner and the awards, they got called out, did their job, came back, tried to grab a little bit to eat, and get called out again. I was sitting right next to their table, and they were really busy, and it was just impressive to see how much that was happening there. Also, I will say that on November 18th, Brandy, Haley, and I attended or participated in a panel for the leadership workshop for Chamber of Commerce, and it was very interesting to meet everybody there and give our little spiel and encourage people to be involved in their government.
Very good. Well, I got a couple of things, but a lot of it has been covered by you guys already. One has to do with that volunteer fire department thing. And what you saw there about some of those folks having to leave, that happens almost every single time they have one of those functions. We didn't have one last year because of COVID, but those young people are immediately leaving. And I got such a kick out of Jody Walker because she was on that team. She had this real nice dress, a red dress on and high heels, and away she goes twice.
It was date night for them.
And so it was, so it was kind of an interesting thing. And her husband was right with her, and he was in a suit. So the way they went with the young troopers out there taking care of things. But that volunteer fire department ball is always a terrific time, and to have counselors go to that is a big deal. And so it was a very nice evening. And of course, like you said, Gary and I was there as well.
Make sure you tell them about what you got as a gift.
Well, Gary and I got regular, I guess, they're kind of chief helmets. Only I got the mayor helmet. Gary got a city supervisor helmet. And Art got the council president trainee
I
helmet.
got the yellow hat that says trainee.
So he's going to be in transition training here. So it was
Bill's
fun.
was delivered today as well.
Okay, and Bill wasn't there, but he did get one as well. So, but next year Bill will be there because he'll be the grand poupon of the city, in charge of things. So he'll be hitting all these things. So he's got one break, but that is going to end here in about 3 or 4 weeks for him. So, and away we go. Now, if that carrying on, I'll go to our AIC meeting that Art and I had on our December 2nd, 3rd, and Art has spoke about the legislative summit, and all I can tell you, folks, is it's going to be very interesting. God only knows. We'll know about March, won't we? So good luck, and I will be even though I'm not going to be the mayor, Art, I'm going to be focused on it, and I still talk to our legislators, and my wife writes terrific letters, by the way. And let's see, airport board meeting is coming up the 13th. So we'll report on that later. There's a holiday parade, though, this Thursday, you guys, and it's supposed to snow. It's going to be great. It's going to be white. We're going to light the tree up. So come on out. It's going to be cold and fun, and we're going to have a good time. So come on out there. There's a bunch of different floats and stuff. I know that
One will be mine.
Tyler Palmer and his
One will be
team
mine.
has got all kinds of things in the running. So it's going to be fun. And Art's going to be doing the judging with me. So we'll have a good time with that.
Feeling judgmental.
We talked about the chili contest, and that's always a good thing. Boy, after having 11 or 12 chilies, holy smokes. I made the comment that's like, it's like,
Only imagine.
well, now this is clean, folks. It's like, sampling beers. After you do about 6 of them, I mean, it's kind of like, or wines, it's kind of like, oh, geez, they all taste the same. I mean, anyway, just thought I'd throw that in there for fun. Oh, and a fun thing, I'm wearing a Vandal tie because the University of Idaho beat the Idaho State Bengals, and the mayor there, Brian Blatt, and I've had this bet that whatever team wins, the other mayor must wear that home team's tie. And so, of course, we beat him, so that's why I'm wearing the Vandal tie tonight. Now, Mayor Blatt has got to wear a Vandal tie next week at his Monday meeting. Now, look at this horrible tie.
Oh.
This is an Idaho State Bengal tie. And I've only had to wear this once. So far, so good. But I am going to pass this tie on to Mayor-elect Art Betke because he will be carrying the torch forward.
And you were a pessimist. Wouldn't it be better just to toss it onto the barbecue?
No, that's this is a good Halloween tie. It's kind of spooky having an Idaho State tie in here. But anyway, Arthur, it does work. It's not near as nice or even close to the University of Idaho
Very
Vandal tie. So, and with that being said, so he's a good sport. And of course, Art's got a chance to meet him because Art's on Association of Idaho Cities, as is Brian Blad. So he's got a chance to meet Mayor Blad. And so the tradition will continue on. So it'll be kind of a fun thing. With that, Gary, do you have anything for us?
Yes, sir. I want to remind the public that we have our police station grand opening on the 16th of December from 4 o'clock till 8 o'clock. Love to have everybody there, see the new facility. Everybody's excited about that. And the very next day, the 17th, is our employee city potluck, holiday potluck. So love to have all the council folks attend. It's a great time, including those council-elect. It'll be a great time with employees get their families out there, and we have a great time. So I'd like to remind people about that.
Very good. Well, I would entertain somebody for a motion to adjourn.
Let's go.
Everybody all in favor of that?
Amen.
Okay, 9:23, folks. Thank you very much.